under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, may we please have a motion to move out of executive session? Second? Thank you. All in favor? Motion passes. If you would please take a look at the agenda. I am unaware of any changes or additions. Board members, are there any? May we have a motion, please, to accept the agenda as stated?
So moved.
And Mike, all in favor? Okay, we are all set there. We give an opportunity to the public to address the board at this time. We ask that if you do wish to address the board, that you make your comments brief, no longer than 5 minutes, and that they be related to school matters. Personal matters, whether directly or indirectly stated, will not be discussed in public. If you do have a personnel concern, we ask that you address it in writing to the board. With that being said, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to our liaison reports. We normally start with Thomas, but we'll start with Schrader tonight.
Oh.
Unless you don't want to.
That's fine. We can start. Good evening, board members. Two
Hello.
weekends ago, 143 of our seniors went on a class trip to New York City. The seniors got to tour the city as well as make new friendships along the way, which came back with nothing but good things to say. On Thursday, November 6th, Mrs. Kyle's Career and Finance Management students participated in mock interviews with Mr. Costanza, Mrs. DeBacco, Mrs. Goodwine, Mr. Groh, and Mr. McBride. The students created their job portfolio, which included their resume, cover letter, references, and job application to print on their interview. The students were well prepared and performed at a high level while gaining valuable experience for the future. The students of the GOAL program took a field trip to the Open Door Mission this Friday, Open Door Mission on Friday, November 14th. They made over 200 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, packed lunches, and cleaned up afterwards. They worked hard and were very respectful and responsible students, said Mr. Speckscore, one of the GOAL teachers. From December 1st through December 12th, the Student Council will be holding a canned food drive for the holidays. If we collect 1,500 canned items, we will get the privilege to have a 2015 Spring Spirit Week. This weekend, we will be hosting the Area All-State Competition, where talented students perform and compete against each other. Along with that, our talent showcase will be held on December 12th. Our girls soccer team players Sarah Lafroy, Maddie Lowe, and Francesca Lee won first in Team All-County, while Lily Stout, Sarah Jacobzi, Rachel Rieger, and Adriana Conciardo won second in Team All-County. Our seniors Bri Damiano and Adriana Conciardo were selected for the exceptional senior game. Thank you. I may now answer any questions.
Thank you.
Right.
Mary?
Good evening, board members. It's hard to believe that our first quarter report cards came home yesterday, and we are all settling into the flow of the school year. Our fall teams were very successful, as 3 teams were named Section 5 champions: girls soccer for the 3rd year in a row, field hockey, and girls cross country. Field hockey and girls cross country made it all the way to states. 2 members of our girls tennis team, Lisa Pan and Callie Saffron, won the girls sectional doubles championship. On Thursday, November 13th, Kevin Hill, Pat Lemoyne, Amber Brady, Abby Lagner, Caitlin Miller, and Emily Resnick all signed their national letters of intent to play lacrosse at their desired colleges. We are very proud of all the success our fall sports have had. Our winter sports are in full swing, and the competitions will begin after Thanksgiving break. Our fall play, Arsenic and Old Lace, is premiering tonight, and there will be 2 other showings tomorrow and Saturday at 7:30. Tickets are $6 and available at the door. Also, there will be winter chorale, band, and orchestra concerts coming up in December. I would also like to share with the board a wonderful experience my leadership class had this week when Mr. Gamina came in and presented. Students in leadership refer to this presentation as a show and tell. This is an opportunity to share something personal about your life's journey. Leadership students were so touched by his inspirational message, they asked me to share this letter. Dear Mr. Gamina, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your life story. Your journey towards becoming the superintendent has inspired us and taught us valuable lessons that we will carry with us throughout our lives. You show us the importance of creating balance between academics, family, and the relationships you build with classmates, teachers, and those who inspire you. By sharing your personal story, it allowed us to see the great man and leader you are. Also, a very big thank you for your support with our fundraiser and your offer to personally double the funds that our class brings in. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. We are very grateful to meet you and spend this time with you. Sincerely, Miss Miller's class. So as a thank you, we framed this letter for him, and which was signed by all the students. So, Mr. Silvalato, would you be able to give this to him from us?
Certainly. He will be,
Thank you.
actually, you're probably going home after this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he will be here shortly, but we'll take it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I didn't hear a report on the speech and debate teams, and I don't know how they did last week, but I would like you, from both Schrader and Thomas, if you do know of any of the students who were on the speech and debate, to tell them how impressed I was when I heard some of their speeches. Terrific job from both Schrader and Thomas on that speech and debate Saturday.
Okay,
Board, any other?
okay, thank you.
I don't see PTSA here, nor do I see a rep from the WTA. So we'll move on. Board members, we are going to get a project update on our facilities project, particularly the roofing situation. And I guess Brian and Blaine, you're going to highlight some of the information for us.
Good evening. I'd first like to introduce Mr. Tomaselli from SEI Architects, who's designing the project for us and is our lead on it. He'll be joining us for questions as well. Just a quick update of what's going on. The roof portion of the project is going to be submitted this week, actually tomorrow. Just a couple signatures to get this evening, and we will be good to go with the roof portion heading to facilities planning. The building envelope and repairs will be submitted the beginning of December timeframe, possibly by the end of November, but more likely by the beginning of December. We should see a quick turnaround on both submittals. Right now, it's a 6 to 8 week turnaround, but for these projects, we're hopeful maybe in a more like a 4 to 6 week timeframe. But we do have one change to discuss about the roofing timeline. We're looking at Clem South, Plank South, Schrader, Schlegel Road to be completed in the summer of 2015. With Thomas, Spry, Clem North, Plank North, DeWitt, State Road to be completed in the summer of 2016. With no roofing items taking place at Willink and the bus garage. So why the change? We had a legitimate concern of trying to complete all buildings in one summer. Very few, if any, of the contractors that are large enough in that area we felt could pull off this feat. It was a tremendous amount of square footage, a tremendous amount of space, and it just wouldn't work out well for us, I think, if we tried to force the issue into one summer. Plus, we're competing against all other school districts that have projects going on as well in the area, so we're always up against that. We're concerned about the quantity over the quality product at the end of the line. I feel like they'd be rushing to get every school done in a one summer time frame. And really the impact on the education environment would be greater. You know, we have that short summertime roofing season. You know, if it's a rainy season, we're going to be delaying over that summer. Now we're looking to push more into the school year. We're looking more into May to maybe start a little sooner. And we do not want people on the roofs as much as possible while education is going on. Well, due to the smells and banging around, it's going to impact. So we got that on the front end, and then, of course, they're going to try to squeeze much into those nice fall days into September, start of school year in October. So it's really just too much impact on the educational environment. So we're going to focus on the quality over the quantity. The roofs in the worst condition were chosen first. The second round roofs will be able to hold on until 2016. We have no concerns about further eroding of those or any issues popping up. We obviously want to lessen the impact on the education environment. Plus, we'll be able to better monitor and control with the project divided in half over the 2 summers. It's very difficult for Blaine to be in all places at one time, although he does his best at it. So cutting the buildings in half, in essence, over 2 summers is going to allow us to have better control over what's going on, along with SEI's and campuses people as well. But we will bid both projects simultaneously. Hopefully we'll get some better pricing that way rather than waiting to bid the second bunch next year where you could cost escalate it perhaps a little bit more. Once the project is submitted, we'll have a better projection of those cost estimates, but right now the early indications are that our pricing will be under the voter-approved amount. Splitting of the roof work will have no impact on the financials for the district. As we complete the project, each school has its own project number. That will be tidied up, finished, sent off for completion, in which we'll start our aid anyways. So this will continue to remain a zero-cost project for the taxpayer. So there'll be no issues there as far as the splitting of the 2 areas. That's just a quick project update. Really, we're in that waiting process right now. We'll really get the ball rolling once we hear back in the January timeframe we're expecting for approval. And things will really start picking up then. Any
questions?
Just want to, first of all, thank you. Appreciate that update, and I'm glad you're splitting it. I mean, just when you look at the 2 high schools alone, the acreage up on those 2 roofs alone probably equal most of the other elementary schools combined, just on the size of those roofs. One thing I was asking about, and Elaine, we talked about it just a minute ago before the meeting, is I know that I saw some stuff at New York State School Boards at the convention around solar power. I know Carm's talked to that a little bit. Any of the roofs that we would consider if we were to go solar and get approved for something like that to help supplement some of the electricity costs, are the roofs in condition enough to hold the additional stress of solar panels if they were put up there?
Right now, where we're at, we are in the application process with an organization called K-Solar. They're supported by NYSERDA and also New York State SED. The one positive thing about us splitting this project into 2 summers, we will put the application in. Their engineers will come out and let us know structurally if they can handle it. And then if that is not the case, we're hoping that in this second round of the roofing that we just listed for you in the summer of 2016, we'll most likely then have to do a design. If we do a design, that will delay some of the, we'll have the time to do a design because they have another year to look at it. So we did our due diligence. We did roof scanning in terms of and identified the roofs that we felt were, in worse condition. But we do have a contingency plan, if that does happen. By splitting it into 2 summers, we'll be able to address that at that time.
Good, because some of the things that I learned about at the convention included that a lot of the incentives behind this at this particular time pay for a tremendous part of the solar energy project if you were to go that way.
Right, and I'll add a little bit more to what Blaine said. I'll add a more global perspective and the finances of it. We would desire to stay away from at any time putting solar on the roofs because that's going to cut into the savings for us. The costs associated with putting them on a roof versus the flat land are significantly more. So whatever firm through K-Solar would be designated to do it, it would charge us a higher rate. Granted, it would probably still be less than what we're paying right now, but it would still be higher rate because it's going to be harder to maintain, harder to operate, and harder to tie into the building when it's on the roof.
Okay.
So in general, they tend to try to avoid going onto the roof if possible. With that said, if it is chosen that way, there's ways to write into the agreements that whatever structurally is done onto the roof, which would be minimal because they're going to tie into the actual foundation of the building, into the steel, and would just pierce the membrane for the most part. They would then pick up any warranties that would be null and void on our roofing. That would be written into any contract that, okay, you've altered our roofing system, our roofing structure. It's voided our warranty that we just had done. You now have to pick that up from that point forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
We also talked about that never go much further. We explored it, but that was windmill, wind power. And because if you're not using the roofs, we got land. The input as far as doing wind power compared to solar power, is there a huge difference? Have we looked at that at all?
I haven't seen a significant push for that in this area, unless we're going to pop it off of Lake Ontario in the water where the breezes are.
Well, we have two down the road on 104 that Bob Bechtold uses at Arbeck Plastic, and they seem to work very well. So I don't know. Is that something we were looking into, Carm, or?
I was thinking more of the ones that are to the southwest of us in Wyoming County.
Oh, those are huge.
Those are considerably larger. When I think wind turbines, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, Mike, I think we can look into that. I think there are a couple factors. One, right now, the incentives for solar panels,
Yep.
basically it's no cost to us.
Okay.
And those incentives I have not seen for wind power. Second piece, just having a large windmill. We don't really have a lot of land, believe it or not, except the state road, and I'm not sure how the neighbors would feel about that windmill. So anyway, those are the two factors that I think we'd have to deal with.
Thank you.
Just a little bit more on the solar. I know that, I believe the town is considering a solar project. And I wondered if there was any potential of doing some sort of merged project that might result then in additional aid because of efficiency. So I don't know if that's reasonable or practical or even where the town is, but do you know, Blaine, are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Carm, are you? Do you?
Yeah, the town was looking at a parcel, I want to say down Salt. It was definitely, actually, you know what? It was on Phillips, next to their water treatment plant.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
And they were looking for an array of panels. I don't know if they're moving forward with that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it,
But and I'm not sure if our incentives would tie into that or not. But certainly something we could talk
Well,
about.
what I was thinking of, would there be any type of merged energy savings by working with them at any
Right.
level that would give
Right.
us additional aid or whatever from the
Makes
governor's
sense. Okay.
And that
projects? That was
would
all.
also play into working with your municipalities.
Mhm.
about trying to-
Correct. That's what I was thinking, yeah. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, first of all. My question, I guess, is, I hope I didn't miss it in the presentation, but splitting of the roof work has no impact on the financials for the district. So when you put the bid in, that's for the bid for the whole entire, all the roofs for the capital project, and it doesn't matter the time on that.
Right, we're gonna bid it all together as one project, but with construction being phased over 2 seasons.
Okay.
Theoretically, the contractors can lock up their material orders. They may build in some escalation for labor increases
Right.
the following year, but the flip side of that is they're already starting to book and, plan for their work in the summer of 2016. So there's some value to to them in doing that. So overall, we've looked at it a couple different ways, and with campus construction management, and ultimately feel that, it's kind of a wash in terms of cost.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Great report, thank you. The only question I have, just curiosity, I know in the past when we've done large projects, we've had a clerk of the works. This isn't a significantly large project, but do we have somebody who serves that way, or?
Yes, there's a person in my department, his name is Tony Garavio.
Oh, okay.
Tony will be moving up and moving into that role to help assist with the
Excellent.
vastness of the project, simply because it's multiple sites. And so he's been in the planning phase from day one, and he's doing really well with us. So.
Good, thank you.
Blaine, we're learning that the roofs will be done in a 2-year period. Will that also include the pointing work that we're doing and all the others?
Yes, and that's going to be the second, when we discuss the building envelope, that timeline, that's going to be the second submission that's going in December. So we'll break that down and phase that down accordingly also.
Okay, great. This does not require any action. It was for information. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to look at a new art course. And when I think of 3D art, I think of computers and animation, opposed to something like sculpturing, which is, in my mind, three-dimensional. But 3D means 3-dimension. So I'm interested in hearing what this new art course is all about.
We're excited to tell you about it, and really think its time has come. With me tonight is Sue Toomey, who's our lead teacher for art at Thomas High School, and she's our Thomas High School's resident expert on 3D art. So I'm going to let Sue tell you a little bit about the course description first.
Okay, we are projecting that it would be a full-year course. We presently already have contemporary crafts as the prerequisite for the 3D side. We have ceramics 1 and 2 and sculpture 1 and 2. Those are really intro to the media, so the thought is to have a course that could push the students that have already had the intro to the media to now start developing actually thematic projects, really pushing more of the design concept. With your thought of the computer piece, I can see down the road that maybe a 3D printer would be a great asset to this course to assist in the model making or the maquettes that they might be using for the idea for this.
One of the reasons we're excited about having a course like this is part of the new Regents Action Plan on their pathways to graduation in the arts and in other content areas that previously haven't been here. And when we think about 3D art and we think about students becoming college and career ready, we know that through design we can fit that mold pretty well. We know that students working in a design course are now bringing that to other parts of perhaps a career, could very well prepare them for either out of school, immediately after high school work, as well as moving into a 2-year school. And of course, the traditional art programs that we're all familiar with at the college level. We're also excited because we think that we can begin to attract other students into a course like this that normally don't choose the higher level academic courses and may find that the hands-on nature of a 3D design course in art will suit them. Of course, we never lose what we learn, but does this add to their own, I don't know if I'd say marketability, or just the idea of what else they could do after they leave us, as graduates in Webster. We're looking to use this course also as a way of teamwork, which isn't often seen in visual art. When we think about design and you think about those rooms where this happens off-site and people are working together to build or design pieces, they talk and they work in teams and then they work with each other to assess it and to problem solve it. And I think that this is something that we've been missing in our visual arts courses, and so we're looking to include that as well. So we're really pretty excited about this. I think this time has come.
Board members, any questions? Ian?
Just one. Would there be additional cost implications given, I heard Sue mention a 3D printer or perhaps other supplies or equipment, or is it neutral because something else would be retired?
It's a great question. We aren't sure yet about enrollments for the course. You know,
Right.
we haven't begun to talk about this, and the 3D printer is something that's brand new to us in Webster.
Right.
It certainly could serve a function. It wasn't part of our initial projection
Right.
because
It would be a
pun
grant.
intended.
You know, I'm anticipating even writing grants if needed, that might be a thought.
Good, Mike? Tom?
great. Absolutely. Oh, thanks.
Question that I had, was there a possibility of possibly working with some of your technology courses like CAD to be able, once you design something, to be able to take that into the art class and then take it from visualization of thought into actual?
Actually, we just had a little side discussion tonight, just thinking about some of the the ways that this could complement that. I think that would enlighten, I mean, I have a son who's an architect, and so one of the pieces was he needed to have the tech courses, but he also needed some of the art. He needed to have some of the conceptual thinking and pushing that creative aspect, not just knowing how to do it, but actually pushing that a little bit more. So I absolutely think that would work well with both.
One way to increase enrollment.
True.
There you go.
You okay, Paul? Sue?
Yes, when I saw this on the agenda, I did think in my mind it was going to be working with the 3D printers that we, but, so could you give me an example of a project that the kids would do?
That's right, they're going to ask
We were
that,
trying to
you know.
anticipate.
Great minds think alike.
We have not written the curriculum yet, but
Right.
in my head, was just trying to think. I said I was listening to NPR on the way in, and they were talking about how design now, functionality of things, there might be taking a product and redesigning it to make it look more visually pleasing. So there may be things in the medical field that might be something that, you know, they function well, but they visually don't have the appearance of something interesting or creative and eye-catching or with that idea. So it could be something in that vein. I can see it going into product design. I can see it going into maybe a little preliminary architecture kind of. I can see it going into furniture. I mean, so it can go into a number of different
Excellent.
areas that we hadn't done just sculpturally prior.
Go back
Okay.
to Mike.
Excellent.
Confused. So what I'm hearing right now is you're talking more towards technology side and design on that side of it. My idea thinking was that you were going to use it towards art projects themselves, as far as sculptures, things like that.
I think there's an overlap.
Not mutually exclusive. I mean,
Right.
they could very well work together, and that's actually what your design teams often come from, an art
Okay.
degree.
All right.
And so why can't we begin a little earlier marrying these for kids?
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Excellent. I look forward to the next report and seeing some examples.
Yeah.
Busy summer.
We're planning on offering this next September.
Yes.
Will
The
we be
summer,
offering it at both Thomas and Schrader?
Correct.
usually our courses are driven by enrollment.
Depending on enrollment.
Of
Right,
course.
right, depending on enrollment.
Excellent.
Okay, board members,
gotta
again,
make
this
this
is
up.
for
For the
information.
board.
There is no action required for it, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
so much.
Thank you.
Welcome, Carmen.
Hey.
Hi.
It is
I
time
know.
for your report.
Thanks. So I spent my evening at Clem South at a family informational meeting from 6:15 to 7:15, so that's why I was late. But I am here in time for my superintendent's report. So I wanted to open my report with a thank you to Webster parents. There have been opportunities throughout this past week for parents to attend meetings, such as tonight at Clem South, that impact their child's education and well-being. And as is typical of our parents, they have shown an overwhelming level of interest and support for issues that impact our children and our school district and our community at large. I wanted to mention one such meeting. Last Wednesday, so 8 days ago, we held a district-wide drug information forum at Webster Thomas High School. We partnered with the Webster Police Department to share information with parents about ingestible drugs, such as candy laced with THC, the chemical found in marijuana. The forum definitely addressed one isolated incident of this candy that was found at Webster Thomas High School, but in the bigger picture, it brought together Webster's outstanding team of chemical abuse prevention specialists, social workers, principals, and security personnel to discuss ways to educate your children and ourselves about drugs, how to recognize signs of drug use, and how we can all partner together to keep our children safe. I want to thank Lieutenant Dennis Kohlmeyer of the Webster Police Department, who was on hand to not only share important information with parents, but to answer many of your questions. Lieutenant Kohlmeyer is a Webster parent with children in our district, and for him to give up some of his time to come out to keep our children safe was commendable, and again, thank you, Lieutenant Kohlmeyer. The capacity of the Thomas Auditorium is approximately 750 people, and we had parents standing in the back of the auditorium with extra seating. Clearly, this information is wanted, needed, and helpful. So again, thank you for continuing to respond to opportunities that provide invaluable information for all of us as we work together for the health and well-being of our kids. In my column this week in the Webster Herald and the Webster Post, I saluted our school-related professionals who had a special recognition day set aside on Tuesday, November 18th. These are staff members that include school nurses, teachers' aides, security personnel, school secretaries, and the lunch ladies we've all come to know and love, and bus drivers. And I know they will always have the third Tuesday in November set aside for us to say thank you, but let's remember to say thank you to these dedicated staff members all year long, many of whom your children interact with every day and truly do make a difference in their lives. I think of Mrs. Nespeka in the nurse's office that my daughter got to know really well when she wasn't feeling too well a couple years ago. When I see those first snowflakes fly, as we certainly did this week, luckily we weren't in Buffalo, I know the performing arts program in Webster is heating up. So as a matter of fact, Webster Thomas's opening night of the drama Arsenic and Old Lace is tonight. And actually it just opened up 7 minutes ago, and runs through Saturday with performances at 7:30. Tickets are $6 and they're available at the door. Also, the holiday concert season is already underway, and there are so many opportunities for all of us to enjoy our talented student musicians this month and next. So be sure to visit our district website at websterschools.org and click on the calendar tab at the top of our homepage so you can note all of your favorite concerts that you don't want to miss. And lastly, just a quick yet very important reminder that Thanksgiving recess runs from next Wednesday through Friday. So no school Wednesday, and obviously no school Thursday and Friday. All Webster schools will be closed for students, faculty, and staff for the Thanksgiving holiday, and I'm sure the rest of the board and all of the board members wish all of our families a very happy Thanksgiving filled with gratitude and kindness. That ends my report.
Thank you, Carm. We now will move into board business. We have a draft of the budget calendar that Brian has proposed to us. Are there any particular details you wish to share with us, Brian, at this time on that budget calendar?
Sure. I just wanted to point out a couple dates that are pretty important. March 1st is when our tax levy limit calculation is due to the Office of Comptroller. And our last legal day to adopt would be April 24th, currently on our schedule. It's August 9th to adopt the budget. I just wanted to stress that point, that there is some additional space if needed, if additional questions need to be discussed about the budget, that we do have until April 24th, and that the property tax report card then must be submitted within 24 hours, so I've highlighted that. And then our budget hearing is set for May 7th, and our budget vote day is May 19th, 2015 this year.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions on that calendar? Okay, thank you.
Very thorough.
Okay, we also have in front of us a resolution indicating that we can save over $400,000 on our debt service by refinancing or refunding, I think refunding is the technical term, a 28B serial bond. So, Brian, you want to fill us in a little bit more on that?
Sure. We have the opportunity to get a reduced interest rate on what is left of the bond from this actually goes back to the renovations from 2006. So the bonding took place in 2008. So we have the opportunity to reduce our interest rate going forward on the life of that is left. So since the opportunity presents itself, it's wise to take it for the remainder of the life of the debt payment, which equates to a fairly substantial savings overall of just a little under $500,000 and roughly around $50,000 per year savings for the life of the bond on interest that we'll see.
Any questions from the board? This does require action. May we have a motion, please, to accept the resolution to refinance this bond? We need a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sue. All in favor of the motion? Opposed?
We do need a
Oh, roll call? Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Ann? Sue?
Yes.
Mike Guston? Tom?
Yes.
And Mike Suffoletta?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Board members, we also have a resolution asking us to accept a proposal from the Pupils Benefits Incorporated to provide accident insurance for our students. Mr. Brian, any comments on that?
Yeah, quick little background is we, for the past 3 years, have been using a reserve to offset the student accident liability. And Excellus was the main contact on that. They took care of everything from beginning to end. And very recently and unexpectedly, for the 15 districts that had been using Excellus that were tied to the healthcare consortium, they got out of the business, and we were left trying to scramble and find somebody in the interim. So the districts, we banded together and bid it through a common agency. And for the most part, everybody came back with pupil benefits as the lowest responsible bidder, with some of upgrades to what Excellus had provided. As you see, some additional eyeglass coverage, contact lens, and hearing aids are now added, which weren't before. And we're locked in to a 3-year rate. So it had its advantages. It's a slightly more per year cost, but with the extra benefits for our students, it easily pays for that. And the training aspect of it as well was what segregated it. They're bringing somebody out to train all of our point people on the process and where to turn to and contact. So,
Any questions from the board?
The annual cost per year is going to be approximately how much was it?
right around that 68.7. Yeah.
Okay, 69,000. Okay.
And we're locked in for with that price for 3 years.
3 years.
But that doesn't preclude us from going out to the market on a yearly basis to see what else is out there.
This does require action.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second? Paul? All in favor of accepting the resolution for student accident insurance?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. We'll now move into our school liaison reports. Ann, can we start with you?
Sure. Clem Narth actually moved their meeting to just last night, and I wasn't able to attend because we had our meeting. But I know that they have coming forward their Holiday Helping Hands on December 3rd, which is a family event that they do activities that are then donated to various charities and organizations. Clem Plank South has been working on its School 17 project, and they actually have also had a book fair that concludes tonight. So both organizations are busy.
Mike?
Went to Plank North meeting last week, and PTSA, and it was a very nice meeting. Principal David Peter put on a nice report on the changes in grading going forward. What was that called again, David? Standards-based grading, and very interesting on how it was. That's about it.
Thank you. Tom? Paul?
Clem South, as Carm mentioned, they've been having their meetings regarding the enrollment. And I would be very in big trouble if I don't mention the book fair going on at Clem South. The big day is the weekend, the first week in December, I believe they're on Saturday, December 6th also. I think I might be working the register on that day. And then also I had the pleasure of going to a Spry Spaghetti dinner for veterans, and it was excellent, well run. The students were amazing, but so were the veterans. And it was so nice to be able to talk to a couple of veterans. I met specifically Bruce and Mary. Bruce is a veteran and now is a Webster District bus driver. And he couldn't speak just so highly of Webster in general. And there's been a great lot of stories he shared with me. So it was well done, Dave, and committee. So thank you very much for the invite.
Sue?
I don't have anything to report tonight.
And I just want to reiterate, I did, some of the things that Ann said, I was able to attend the Plank South PTSA meeting. They do have that holiday project with School 17, and they also have their literacy night being held December 4th. All right, well, let me just go over the calendar. Tomorrow we have the webinar from NISBA and myself, Tom. Anyone else can join? All right, and I'm making sure on December 1st, we have the WTA Executive Board meeting, Ann and myself. Anyone else?
I think I'll be going.
Okay. Could have, okay. I think because of the holidays, that's about it until our next meeting. All right, so we got that fairly well covered. Okay, we'll move on to our Monroe County School Boards Association. Steering Committee, Sue, you want to?
Actually, the next meeting is January 21st, 2015. That's weird to say.
Ann, do you want to mention anything about labor relations?
Well, should we do legislative first?
Oh, I
Yes.
skipped it,
And,
sorry.
Tom, do you want to mention? The only, I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about the recent court decision, but, or it could be premature, I'm not sure, so I'll leave that to you. The only thing I will comment on, and we haven't had another meeting since our last board meeting, but one of the things that you'll recall we discussed was the technology bond, the smart bond that we anticipated passing and indeed did pass. But one of the things that has come up is the possibility of establishing a technology reserve with some of that money as a way to help manage it in a more cost-effective way. That was raised at the fiscal training that I recently attended. I don't recall if other districts have done that. I don't know if it falls into that category of acceptable reserves, so it's just something I thought I would throw out. You know, one of our concerns is, so you get this money, and then it's how do you sustain the projects that you have dedicated to it, and a technology reserve may be one way to do so. So that was something I thought was valuable to at least explore. Thank you.
As far as the information regarding the lawsuit, if you recall, NISBA joined the nicer lawsuit along with the superintendent's organization. There was quite a few groups involved. And the first time we went up before the judge, we were rejected. It wasn't allowed to go forward. We took that to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, nope, we stand behind what you did, and that there is a conflict with what the legislature and the governor did in putting the GEA into effect. And so we know that the governor's legal team is going to take that to the Court of Appeals. The last time it went to the Court of Appeals, though, around the original lawsuit for New York City and the others were involved, the Court of Appeals held it against the government, saying you do have to fund education properly. So we can hope reigns eternal here that this next time around we'll get another favorable ruling, which will hopefully force them to take a look at the the monies that they actually have, because they're talking as of today on the radio of $5 billion in excess, and how they were going to spend it. How you can have excess when you're in debt, I have not figured that out yet, but they did. So that's just the magic of Albany, and we'll have to see what happens. Magic. That's my report.
Does that ruling really push the idea that the GEA has to be taken care of?
Yes, it does.
And they probably won't do it all in 1 year.
Oh, no. Oh, no. They'll climb some sort of hardship, I'm sure, and try to push it out for as long as they can.
Okay, thank you on that. Now labor.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I attended the Labor Relations Committee meeting, and the program was on costing out of contracts. And it was very thorough, and the implications of it was just the need to be so thoroughly prepared on all the data that you can possibly get, because obviously changes in any labor agreement are important, not just because they impact our employees, but they also have that bottom line that it impacts our taxpayers, and that is, the district has to take into account both. So it was a very informative meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I'm going to combine item 4 and 7 together because information sharing was about the Urban Suburban Transfer Program. And for those that don't know, the Urban Suburban Transfer Program is a program that voluntarily tries to reduce the racial isolation and segregation for academic opportunities in the elementary and secondary schools. And so we did hear from Jeff Crane and Teresa Woodson, who are president and director of the program. And last meeting you had some questions, and we did bring them up, and one of the questions was race versus underprivileged. And presently, the program is voluntarily to reduce racial isolation and segregation. So it is on race, not economics. Another question was, how many students can a district take? Well, because this is a voluntary program, each district selects how many students they wish to have participate. Just to give you an idea of what other districts are doing, Brighton has 58 participants. They took on 10 new students this year. Brockport has 73 participants, and they took on 8 new students this year. And Wheatland-Chili has 34 participants, and they took on 6 new students. So that is an idea of what they're doing. Now, the cost implications. Now, students who transfer to a suburban district bring with them the state aid that they would have received in the Rochester School District. And we heard that aid is probably in the neighborhood of about $10,000. There is a cost, and that cost is roughly about $700, including transportation. We also learned at the committee meeting the application process, the interview process, and how students are screened to belong to this particular program. The process is rigorous. The students must have parents who are dedicated and can support the child through their entire experience. So in many respects, you're taking the students whose parents want them to be educated. Those were the main questions you had, so that we're bringing back. I think the board needs to discuss the idea of, do we want to bring in some speakers, particularly Teresa Woodson, and possibly some of the superintendents that are participating in here, and to hear more about for Webster. So I'm gonna throw that out to you. You don't have to give us an answer right now, but at our next meeting, I think we should process that. Yeah.
I believe I indicated that I would be interested in something like that, and I think it would be good to do it in a workshop setting.
And do you have any comment? I mean, because you were also at that meeting.
No, it was interesting because of the initiation of the program with those two purposes. That is why it has not got an economic basis at this time. I mean, they also did address the potential of that coming under question from a legal point of view, and so they are prepared for that, should that move to that. But at this point, this is where it is.
Approximately when that started.
50 years ago.
50 years ago.
They had their anniversary this year.
The Western Iroquois was the first one, and Wheatland Chili is the last one that has enrolled in it. There are presently... Fairport's in it. On the east side, Rush Henrietta does not belong, but you take a look at their demographics, and I'm not sure they would be interested. Penfield belongs, Brighton belongs, Fairport, Pittsford. On the east side. Other questions at all? All right, thank you. Really, we don't have much on the executive because that meeting isn't until January anyways.
Actually, it's December 3rd.
I better put that on my calendar.
Yeah. Are you going to go, Carmen? December 3rd, it's a Wednesday night?
To the executive.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So let's move with our next topic.
No field hockey that night, no, okay.
In 2013, Governor Cuomo signed into law a bill offering qualifying veterans a tax exemption for the very first time in regard to school taxes. Although the board was aware of this bill last school year, we did not know the ramifications and the unintended consequences of offering this exemption. At this point, we do have some more information that can be shared with us. So, Brian, if you could tell us that.
Sure. And Tom, feel free to jump in since you were at the Monroe County meeting with me. So the law was signed by Governor Cuomo on December 18, 2013, and what it allowed for was a partial property tax exemption for qualifying veterans. This was the first time school districts were now authorized to provide this exemption. Counties, cities, towns, villages could do it before. They've actually had the ability to do it for about 40 years now. There are 3 levels of exemption: a period of war, a combat zone, or a service-related disability. And a person can qualify for 2 of the 3. You're disabled and served in a combat zone, or you're disabled and served during a period of war, are usually the ones that you qualify for. So based upon the service during a period of war, they're specifically listed what technically is a period of war. Exemption amounts are based on service and disability. The possible max exemption in Monroe County, which the county actually uses right now, is $180,000 of taxable value. The minimum you possibly could have would be $16,000. So there's a wide array of exemption levels you could go through. There's no income limit, which is different from the STAR exemption that everybody's used to. That you have income limits on STAR, there's no income limit on this exemption. The property owner is a veteran, a spouse of a veteran, or a surviving spouse of a veteran to be able to qualify. There is one additional way to qualify. It's called a Gold Star parent. That is if you've had either the parent of a child who was killed during one of these periods, you qualify for the exemption. Your primary residence must be your primary residence, same as STAR. You can't get it multiple times. Must have served during the period of war as defined in the statutes. We have World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, Vietnam, Persian Gulf conflict, and there is also now a Cold War time period, so which pretty much covers all the periods between World War II and Korea and Vietnam, and Vietnam up into the Persian Gulf. So there isn't too many time frames that aren't included now. You must have been honorably discharged, and additional family members may be eligible. There are some technicalities that you can, some additional people could be eligible that I did not mention earlier. Reservists are generally not eligible for the most part. So what would the impact be on Webster? I think the main point to stress here is it really has no financial impact on the district itself. We're not going to have a levy switch because of this. It's not going to cost us money on our revenue side. There is no financial impact on our books per se. That's often a misnomer. I wanted to get that out there. What the exemption does is it shifts the tax burden from those who qualify to those who do not. So one group receives a lower bill, the other group's going to receive a higher bill. So what's going to get shifted for Webster? Well, the parcels that make up in the Walworth and Ontario sections of our school district are negligible. There's about 8 properties that would qualify, and it doesn't amount to very much. The bulk of the exemptions are in Webster and Penfield locations. So based on all our current equalization ratios and our recent assessment data, and based on maximum exemption rates, it would be a shift of $79 million in tax base to those who do not qualify. So it increases the rate by about 1.96%. I chose using max exemptions because that's what Monroe County currently does. And I think they would make it much easier on the assessors if the school districts did go ahead and adopt the exemption. To save some time and efficiency would be to adopt what the counties are doing as well, to kind of go along with them. That's why I chose the max exemption, to see what that would do to the figures. So our tax rate would go to $21.58 per thousand. That's a 42-cent increase. And using an average Webster residence valued at $169,000 right now. So the non-qualifying taxpayer on that assessed value would see an increase of $70.23 in their yearly tax bill. There's a lot we still don't know what the exact burden will be until it actually becomes a reality. Are there additional people then that would qualify that the county might not know of? Highly unlikely, but it's a possibility. And we're using a lot of estimates. It's a significant amount of property data that has had to have been sifted through right now. And to be honest, we don't have direct access to the real property system to run the reports ourselves. So we've had to take it and manipulate it to try to get the information we need at this point. So there is some possibility for shifts that way in what could possibly happen. Here's the real, when it gets down to it, when you start taking out the numbers, what this possibly could really be about. So who's saving money in this? New York State is. The STAR exemptions are applied after all other exemptions. The exemption will reduce STAR payments from the state and shift the burden to local taxpayers. So what I've tried to do is go through a little scenario right now using our $169,000 as our assessed value. So in our current model, there is no veterans exemption. But maybe this person has senior income exemption, which is 50%. So that would get reduced off their property value. Next, you would take their senior STAR exemption, would come off the property value, leaving a taxable value of a little over $26,000. So the taxes paid by the homeowner on this would be $551.97. The STAR revenue would be $1,285.
Which would come to the district.
Correct. That would come as our STAR payment. So we're whole. We're getting our property taxes and we're getting our STAR.
So Brian, from that home, the district is receiving $1,700.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
551 plus 1285. Correct?
Correct.
Two different checks.
Yep, two different checks.
Yes.
One's coming from the homeowner as the normal tax bill process. The other would be coming from STAR. So now let's go through the scenario with a exemption thrown in there. So the veterans here, I picked 120,000 because that's probably going to be the most common. A lot of people wouldn't quite get to that max of 180. So I dialed it down a little bit for this exemption. I didn't, if I chose 180, it would wipe out the average property value so the exercise would have been dead from day one there. So I chose 120, so that leaves $49,000 in assessed value. This homeowner still has a 50% senior income, so there's another $24,500 off. They still qualify for Senior Star, which the rate for this year was the $58,420. So I left a negative up there to show we just zeroed out a $169,000 property and went negative $33,920. So what really happens? Taxes paid by the homeowner go away. So what happens to our Star now? Well, Star we used to get reimbursed at $58,420. We're not anymore. We're only getting reimbursed on Star for $24,500. So $33,920 of that Star just went away. State's no longer having to pay that. So we have lost the taxes paid by the homeowners become nothing, and the loss of Star revenue to the district now. Instead of getting that $12,850, we're getting a much smaller check from Star of $717.90.
But you did say that there was no tax loss to the districts, but that's because that tax
Because-
burden is being shifted to someone
Thank you.
else.
Yes.
Okay.
Nice segue into my next point.
Okay.
All that money has now just been that Star money has now just transitioned itself over to our taxpayers.
It's huge.
So, Brian, as I look at that, the district will no longer receive a $551 tax check from this particular home, correct?
Mhm.
It got
Correct.
zeroed out. And Star revenue is $567 less, correct? All right. So the net, the burden, a burden of $1,000 or $1,100 has now been shifted to those who don't qualify for this exemption.
Correct.
So $1,100 on an average home would then be shifted to like the neighbors who aren't veterans.
Right.
Right? And, all right, so there's really, again, your point was the district's revenues and
We're still going to get the same $93 million
Correct,
from our tax
levy.
It's just
The
who's going to
93
be giving us the $93 million.
who's paying the 93 is going to be very different.
Correct.
Okay.
And the fact, too, that the state saves that Star money that they
Correct.
would have paid out.
For us, in a suburban Monroe County district where our assessed value is significantly higher, if you drive 30 minutes into a more rural area where the assessed value is much less, you're talking significant Star savings, zeroing out a considerable amount. Some counties, if you look at the county-wide, their average assessed value is below what our Senior Star exemption would be. So some people are, it would wipe it out entirely.
You've given us much to think about.
You're not done.
Oh, boy.
One more slide.
So what are the next steps that we would take on? The exemption is really a further erosion of the tax base, including the shift of Star. And it's really never a good thing to erode your tax base. One of the conversations that came up was, what's next? Who's going to be the next group that gets exempted? Emergency responders, public employees. It's just, you could do one thing at the state level and push it down to the local level. So it was successful the first time. What's to stop second time, the third time, and further eroding the tax base? That was a main concern that came up at the Monroe County School Board's meeting. Any reduction to the taxable assessed value of the district will have an impact on the amount of taxes paid by the community. The board can choose whether to offer the exemption and select from various levels prescribed by law. There's a significant swath of exemption levels, 8 steps that we could do. And the exemption must be adopted by March 1st of 2015 to allow the assessor's office time to apply for September 2015, the 15-16 school year tax bills. Board of Education must hold a public hearing, and notice must be published 5 to 10 days prior to the hearing. It's recommended to do surveys and straw polls through the Monroe County School Boards Association. I know a couple districts on the west side that currently have polls up on their website asking the community to respond. A simple board majority vote is sufficient to adopt or reject the exemption. and Board of Educations are not obligated to take up this issue and can rescind in future years if passed at any time. So if you'd like to try it for a year, see what it does in real time and real numbers and get real reports from Monroe County Real Property and see what actually gets shifted, and you don't like what you see, you can rescind for the following year. Any additional questions or?
Well, Mike,
I just want to say thank you, Brian. You covered it well. It matched a lot of my notes, so appreciate that. That was well attended, by the way, folks. There was over 80 people there. Wow. It was packed room to hear this. So I'll let you guys go with questions.
I thought that was excellent, Brian. I started on this last year, listening to different things, not understanding different pieces. Thought you did an awesome job on putting it out real simple. One question that I have is, how many households, have you figured that out between Webster and Penfield that would probably qualify compared to the total households?
It's actually a fairly even split. It's about 38 million and just about 37 million between our Penfield portion and Webster portion. The total amount of households, it would take me a little bit of time to add those up.
I'm trying to get an idea or a correlation or a ratio between the households that are going to qualify for this compared to the households that won't qualify for this, to see what's the offset that you showed us, and is it worth it? I guess that's what I look at it, as far as the ratio between yes and no, as far as getting it.
And I think, Brian,
What
I
percentage?
think what you said to us was if we went max, if we did the max exemption, the non-exempted, the non-veteran households would have a 1.96% rate increase.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. That's our
a
tax
lot.
cap.
That's our tax cap. Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing we don't know is how it's going to affect the tax cap. That has not been told by the state.
Tax levy is
Correct.
not
It won't
changing.
take.
The tax levy is not changing, and that's what the tax cap is on. So it shouldn't,
2%. It's
Yes.
very close to what.
it is, yes.
So now.
But it's doubling.
Correct.
Yes,
I mean, so
it will
let's,
double the
let's
tax
just say
rate.
let's say that we go out at a certain percentage of a tax rate increase for
Right.
our entire district of 1%, 1.2.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everyone's expecting, okay, my tax is going to go up 1.2%. Well, the majority of our taxpayers will not go up 1.2. They'll go up 1.2 plus 1.96. So whatever that is, it's 3.1. And it's like, so what I'm worried about is, all of a sudden they're getting their tax bill and they're saying, how come my tax rate went up 3.1%? You said it was only going to go up 1.2.
Exactly.
So if we end up doing this, it's a huge communication piece for us to make sure that we get that out there.
Yeah.
The other aspect to this that I didn't do a demonstration for, but STAR is capped itself at 2%. So we have no way of ever projecting what those numbers are going to look like and how much more that's going to push back down into the locality, because your STAR can only raise by 2%, regardless of how much more is on your assessed value.
And I think, too, the way it plays into the assessed value, too, is that Penfield's assessed at 100%, and we're at 90, 89, whatever.
Right.
So that's why you have the split. I think when you change that around, it may not be 50-50, but maybe 60-40 or something like that. Webster carrying the better chunk.
The other thing, which could possibly happen, but I don't think it'll happen here, is you have clusters of where veterans are. And that is a real fear for some communities that could shift their equalization ratios.
Complicated.
Ian?
A couple things. Would a veteran have to apply for this exemption like a STAR?
They would not,
Okay, so
because
it would be automatic. by
they're
virtue-
they're already there
Okay.
on the books for the county. And
So
so it
at
would
least
just be.
that would be a definite known.
Correct.
I had another question, and it's, what about the veterans that may not register New York State as their primary residence because they would be,
Correct.
so,
They
but
would not
how
be.
would we know that? And I guess we don't need to because it doesn't impact our levy, so, but it really is a very complicated.
Well, aren't we glad we
Paul?
talked about that?
Mine's real simple. Thanks, Brian. You cleared it up quite a bit for me, and just looking at the numbers, there's still a lot to digest in that, and it is a lot to take in, especially with the veterans, and a couple points that you made are important to think about.
Just a process question. It says that the must hold a public hearing and notice must be published 5 to 10 days prior to the hearing. That is if you're going to adopt it, or whether you are or you aren't?
Whether you could hold the public hearing, you don't have to, but if you are going to hold the public hearing just to get the input from the community, to listen, to see both sides, you just have to.
Okay, so it's just for
required-
public
yeah.
input, it's not,
Correct.
but we don't have to do it?
Correct.
Oh, okay, I understand. So we don't have it on our calendar?
No, not yet. That's something we can talk about. But one thing Tom said earlier that's kind of bothering me, and it involves the New York State Constitution, that says the state is responsible for the maintenance and support of the school system. And, it would be real easy and it's wonderful to give tax breaks to people who deserve it, like the veterans. If the state has this money, they have a responsibility of doing their job. And what they've actually done is they've put taxpayer, in my mind, against taxpayer and basically said, board, you figure it out. Boy, that's really unfair.
Well, yeah, to pit one,
Just like they did Medicaid.
neighbors against neighbors.
And especially if you're telling us that New York State has this extra money.
They've got $5 billion right now, because it was on the radio this morning, and they're supposed to get part of the $17 billion settlement from the French
So is the
bank.
is the $5 billion part of the settlement?
Nope.
Oh, that's in addition to the
That's in
settlement?
addition. So we're talking pretty flush.
Brian, there was one more, Mike, if I can.
Sure.
You had mentioned something about an income limit or a means test, right? So for this particular exemption, like, how for certain exemptions, I think for Star,
Right.
if you make $1 million a year, so let's just say that, I'm a senior citizen, I also happen to be a veteran, and I have, I own something, I own this great manufacturing plant, and I make $1 million a year or $800,000 a year. Certain exemptions I would not qualify for because I make way too much money. For this particular exemption, for the veterans exemption, is there any means testing? Is there any income limit? So
Nope. You qualify regardless of income.
Okay, thank you.
So we've got a lot to think about.
Right.
An awful lot to think about, and we have till March to make a decision. And we're not going to make a decision tonight, because we've got to think about this.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Great job, Brian.
Thank you.
Tom, do you have anything to report on the New York State School Boards Association?
Covered it
Okay.
previously. We do have a board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks.
Great. Nothing to report on audit. Sue, anything on policy?
Yes, the policy committee, Mike and Ann, you got your folder. It has a list of the policies we'll be reviewing this year, plus an additional one that's been brought up. And I was thinking, we have our meeting, it's been changed to 5 o'clock on December 4th. And I was thinking, because we've had such a hard time scheduling, that we probably should review, maybe the first meeting we'll review the 1,000s, and the second meeting we'll review the 3,000s. And then if we have anything left over, we can schedule another meeting, to do that. So if that makes sense, thank you very much, Cindy, for making these copies for us. And I'll get an agenda out to you guys. And Brian.
The Budget Advisory Committee doesn't meet until January. Am I correct on that?
The earliest it would meet would be January, where Brian and I will be talking about this tomorrow.
Okay, so, Mike, are you on that? Budget Advisory?
Yes, I am.
And Paul, are you on that also?
I don't think Fritz is, but
Fritz
But,
is.
all right,
I think, yeah. We'll see.
okay. Sue, anything on strategic plan?
Nothing new I reported last time.
Okay, and Tom, anything on SEPTA?
Nothing new.
Nothing new, okay.
Couple of schools
Yeah.
report on that.
Yep.
All right, we'll move into our consent agenda. Board members, you've had a chance to take a look at this. It includes the superintendent's recommendations on the minutes, on personnel actions, on the recommendations on the Committee on Special Education. There's also a health request letter involved there. May we have a motion, please, to accept the consent agenda?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have one more board meeting during the calendar year, which is December 4th. We also have an executive session scheduled for the 18th. It was originally scheduled for the 11th. We're moving it to the 18th. And with that being said, we wish everyone a happy holidays for Thanksgiving, and may we have a motion, please, to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ann. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night, everyone.